I'm going to try to help you a little bit, get some ideas on what's probably confusing you, and that's specifically these things right here, elements and principles and how to apply them in an analysis. I'm going to apply this or approach this from a little different, all right? These are the ones that I emailed to you and have posted so you kind of get the idea on the terms. Um, this basically is the element over here, and these are the particular qualities or properties you need to be sure and consider and discuss where applicable. Principles, of course, these are the main ones. And it seems to me that all the other things that we're talking about that they throw in the text and in the classroom material really applies to these. So these are the ones I'm going to hold you to in this whole course, okay? All right, so I'm coming at you as I would maybe one of my painting classes. And by that I mean I'm going to show you how I would, as an artist, build up a composition. And hopefully that will help you understand what you should be looking for. That's kind of the backdoor approach, but who knows, I'll try anything, okay? This, and I'm going to see if I can bring this up just a bit more so you can see it. Whoop, that was a little too much. I'm working in Photoshop in order to do this for you, and I will, as soon as I get my numbers right here, I will hopefully, yeah, I think you can see that better. This was the photograph, and this painting that I'm going to show you is totally from this photograph. Now, I was there, it's my photograph, and there was something about it that I really liked. I liked I don't know, I liked the light, I liked the foliage, I liked the landscape. So this was what I was working from, and there was just something in this area that just grabbed my attention, and that's what I want to show you, all right, as I work on this composition. Now, in doing so, I have brought up different stages of the painting. Now, this particular is stage 1. And let me tell you a little bit about this composition, all right? Now, you saw the one that I was doing a minute ago. You saw this, and you understand that it's trees and a field, right? Okay, going from there to this, what I want to do is give you trees and a field. Now, this shows a real rough kind of beginning. I always ground my painting with shellac, and I've come in mainly with this magenta and this alizarin crimson to give me my composition, construct. I want this tree to be the significant one. And I'm not going to put it right in the middle, but I want to be sure everybody sees it. So I'm going to do that a number of ways. I'm going to try to contrast the detail in it. I'm going to position it in such a way that by placement it's going to have to be the focal point. So I'm giving us a contrast and a placement, and you may see something else as we go, all right? So again, this is what we're looking at. This is in fact what the tree is. And seeing this, it's a little bit bigger. You can see that than this one back here, but this line is pretty much the same. And I think it makes for a fairly flat composition as it is. So I was determined to take it to this position. Sorry, that keeps coming in big when I try to do that. There we go. I wanted to take it. So you see, I've broken that line up. This right here comes out a little farther in the front. This is a little farther in the back. And this begins to have some detail. Now, the finished product, at least I think it's finished, is this right here. And I have broken this horizontal line up so it's not just a band and a band. I've given myself a small diagonal that leads you into the composition. And if you'll see, this line points to the tree, this line points to the tree, and this tree contrasts in terms of making it more interesting because it's darker, contrast of value, number one. Number two, it's contrasted by the amount of detail. You see a lot more linear stuff going on here with the branches, much more hard line things. And then look at the lines. Look at how the kind of, I guess the implied line of this shadow points you there. And certainly this implied line takes you here, and this one, and even to a degree, this implied line here takes you, or maybe an actual line in both of these cases, takes you to this tree right here. So again, let me show you back to where we were. This is the, what I call a fairly interesting place, but compositionally it's a little flat. So my point was to get you to something a little bit more exciting, which took you first to this stage, and I realize that's much bigger than probably what you can see. Maybe if I do this, yeah, you can see it better there. A little bit bigger than what you can see, and then eventually develop in through here with the amount of detail that I give it to you, then it becomes a little more interesting as a composition. Um, I'll try to keep it from jumping around. So here is what I've done. I have considered my elements here. My line, I talked to you a little bit about the implied line and the quality and the direction of these lines. Let's go back. Directions seem to be somewhat vertical, but mostly horizontal. This is a very bold line across here. And the lines that are implied, you know, this little section, this break, all kind of give you another kind of horizontal band, and could be very dull if it weren't for a bit of a diagonal and the interruption. You see I have a diagonal coming this way, ever so slight, little more here, little more here, little more here. That gives us what we hope diagonal lines are supposed to do, and that gives us, that direction gives us an actual kind of movement in the composition. Now, if I were describing the colors, I would have to say they're highly saturated. If I were talking about reds, I would say it's a very kind of a medium value, saturated, bright red. If I were talking about the blue, I would say that it's a very high value, very light, light blue, not nearly as saturated, just a little bit, almost a tint. All right, so here again, go back and look at these terms, and I think you'll understand a little bit more. Shapes, well, let's see. Could I call it geometric? Certainly not. Abstracted? Maybe. Maybe abstracted, because even though that looks like a tree trunk, if you got up really close, it's just kind of an abstracted tree trunk. Not like Mondrian's piece, for those of you who did that. But again, it's there, but it's a little distorted. So I would either go with abstracted in that sense, just a little bit distorted. Look at the definition for abstract in your terms on the PDF that's in the announcements. Or maybe natural. Maybe natural. Not organic. Be very careful about organic. Okay? Go back and look at those. Value, I would say there's both dark and light value. There's a high contrast from the light sky and the dark this, and certainly the lighter background and these dark shades, that adds a little bit of drama and interest too. So that's another reason I wanted to go ahead and put those in. Now, if I get down to the principles, we've already talked about the focal point, and certainly that would be by contrast, contrast of detail, contrast of value, and placement, everything kind of pointing to it. What about balance, and what about unity? Well, if I'm a painter worth my salt, I want to be sure it's balanced. Now, would I say it's symmetrical? I've got a tree here and a tree here? No, because the definition of symmetrical says if there's a line down the middle, it has to be the same on both. Well, if the line went right here, maybe I can pull a line over here in Photoshop. Don't you just love it? If there's a line right here, things here, I've got a tree trunk here. I don't have a tree trunk here. I have one here, but it's not the same. It's not equal. So that gives me a clue right from the beginning that probably this particular balance is going to be something like, oh, I don't know, maybe asymmetrical, huh? Radial? I don't think so. Radial is almost things coming out from a center. Crystallographic, no, because there are areas like here and here that don't really have any interest or value at all. So I would go with asymmetrical balance. I would go with unity. Certainly a lot of repetition of color, a lot of repetition of these greens and golds that you see all over, and some of the reds. But I also think continuation, these lines that pull you here, and look, that line, this kind of points you here, that takes you back down here, and you kind of circulate through the composition around and around, and that keeps it unified. But you could also write repetition of color if that's better. Maybe you see a repetition of lines, some vertical lines, diagonals. I think your strongest one, though, is probably a continuation and repetition of color. All right, I hope that helps. I chose my own paintings because you will not be seeing those on the internet, which means, of course, that I'm not taking away what could be a valuable source for you to look at, but I am trying to tell you as I paint what I think about, because it's very important in the construction or the composition. It helps me make you look at what I'm seeing in that landscape, which in this case is this very interesting tree. Hope you enjoyed it, hope it helps, and look forward to working with you some more on this. Thanks so much.